The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
I tell you what, you got players coming and going. You got spring practice coming and going. You've got a lot going on, and you have coaches at big-time universities that are looking a little bit goofy. It is a Tuesday, and we look forward to visiting with you with John Adams, the one, the only John Adams, nice enough to join us each and every Tuesday, and we certainly appreciate that. He's brought to you by our good friends at Newbert Collision Center, and when it comes to Newbert Collision Center, just know that they have been there in Knoxville for about nearly 50 years. So, with Newbert Collision Center that you are getting well taken care of. Newbert Collision Center. John Adams joins us now, and John is out and about. I think he's scouting out top prospects that could participate in Tennessee's spring practice next year. Is that right, John?
Gosh, I'm already looking forward to next year's spring practice. I just can't get enough of spring ball. I wish I would have like a second spring, and then you could have another spring game. I mean, maybe Nico will play like 10 plays total or something.
Yeah. Caleb, how are you, sir, by the way?
I'm good. Thanks for asking me how I was doing, Dave. John, he always forgets to do that.
He
never cares about my welfare.
I like to occasionally wait. That makes him sensitive to it. But most of the time, I get you first, don't I?
But Dave really doesn't care that much. I mean, you work with him, but as a fellow human being, he really doesn't care that much. That's just strictly tokenism.
Oh, that's what I thought too.
Yeah, you were onto that.
When I say I hope you get better when he's sick, I'm just like, I hope you get better so you can work. That's basically basically what I'm shooting at. Let's get to.
I want to say,
yes, go ahead.
Before we get started, I want to say off the bat, John, I stand in solidarity with you, and congratulations on getting the new Lady Vols coach upset with you within the first 2 days of her taking the job.
Oh, by the way, we had 3 videos get over like 5,000 views, and all 3 of them had that in it. So what the hell did you do to make her so mad, John?
I didn't get that at all. I wasn't paying any attention to it. I didn't even think anything of it when I asked. It was just an average question. I just asked her if, when she made this new transition, if there was a chance she would modify her approach with her system at a higher level of basketball. And I thought she gave a good direct answer. She said, I wouldn't be here if I didn't, couldn't do that. Didn't think I could do that. So I don't know why there was such a hubbub on social media about it. I didn't get that at all, because part of it might be that and so many of these press conferences involving UT people, I mean, the questions are so soft that if you just ask a normal question, I mean, you could, if you don't, you're expected to ask a question like, Coach, how did you become so wonderful? And I mean, anything other than that, I guess it's perceived as like, ooh, boy, that was a tough question. Tough question. So I didn't get any of that. And I didn't think her reaction was anything, against me at all. I didn't think anything of it. But I mean, I've had coaches stare daggers at me, so that I just wouldn't have thought that. And I care so much about what coaches think, so that would have been very hurtful.
I can tell. But let me ask you this. Do you think that she wanted to make a statement and used your question as a jumping off point? That's what I want to ask you. And it's brought to you by our good friends at Newbert Collision Center. John, I want to ask you that in 15 seconds.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
his vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Okay, so when Kim Stevens, the new coach, is introduced for the Lady Vols, I'm curious, when you asked that question, which was, do you feel certain that your offense, your approach can work at this level? And she had the strong response. Do you think she was looking for a moment that she could assert her confidence over a group of fans that have pretty high expectations, John?
No, I don't think that was. I mean, she might. I don't think she was like ready for that question. Again, I just didn't think the question was that significant. I thought it was just an average question to ask, because particularly when you're going into a transitional year. And I think it was a good press conference answer. It was a very good, hey, we do what we do, and other people better start worrying about us. But I think when she looks at her roster and sees her players on video, she's probably going to need to modify that a little bit. And ultimately, I mean, I guess she'll stick with her system, but I think, this roster was not designed for run and gun 94 feet of basketball.
Yeah, Caleb, I want you to get in that as well. I mean, how much of a transition do you think this is? And then we're going to get into the Nico Iamaleava storyline, which is that I think a lot of people already consider him a star, which is very intriguing to me. But first, your thoughts on her response to the question, and can you win with her up and down style in this day and age of women's basketball? It's such a departure from what Pat Summitt did.
Yeah, I think you can win. I mean, I'm totally with John. I think you need you're going to have to up the size of the players when you get to this level that can play the up and down style if you want to win at the level she won at the lower levels. But yeah, there's no reason to believe you can't win. I definitely think that I mean, I will go even further, and this is I know I sound like the "and Danny we trust" type of guy, but I'm like, I don't think Danny White would have hired her if he didn't think it could translate to this next level either. And he does have a pretty good track record of hiring. As much as he does love up-tempo styles, no matter what the sport is, in case you guys haven't noticed, Danny White just really just likes fast-paced sports in general, because that's all he hires for in coaches. He seems to always hire the ones that work out at the higher level too.
John, this fast-paced style seems to be the creme de la creme. It seems to be the thing to do lately. Iowa's doing it, but they have Caitlin Clark, who is pretty good. Is this up-tempo thing a trend that Tennessee should be able to take advantage of, or ultimately do you still have to be pretty big in the post to be able to win championships?
Well, look at South Carolina. That's the standard.
True.
They can play any kind of style you want to play. They play pretty up-tempo, but they also work through the post when they set up in their half-court offense. I mean, you need both. You look at LSU, its post players can run pretty well. So, I mean, it could play that up-tempo game. Kim Caldwell's style is really at the far end of the spectrum. It's very up-tempo. I mean, against James Madison, I think it took almost 100 shots. It was an overtime game, but they're really going up-tempo, and she substitutes frequently. So you're going to need depth. I mean, it's an extreme example, and I'm a sampling of this, and I like that kind of basketball. So I think it could be very exciting. I just think there might be a transitional period in there. You've got to get your kind of players, and that's what the transfer portal is for.
Well, again, I want to get into the Nico thing, but Caleb, does this grease the wheels off a fan base that does have a very strong social media presence that has enacted some change at times? Actually, Vol Twitter and Lady Vol's fan base has as well. Does this help provide a soothing transition if it's an up and down pace? Because I think all three of us would agree that if you've got to watch the three, you like the up and down Showtime style of basketball more, right?
Yeah, this is going to be what does it. But Vol Twitter, I'm just going to say, gets excited about everything. They what was it, John? About 2 years ago, they were in love with Kelly Harper because she gave some tough halftime speech to Arkansas. And they're like, that's my coach. Kelly Harper is tough. I love Kelly Harper. And then 2 years later, they wanted her fired. I mean,
Well,
14 years ago, they fell in love with Derek Dooley because he won the press conference when he was hired at Tennessee. Okay, so it's like
I still remember when Lane Kiffin was hired, and everybody really wanted him to win the press conference. Sean, do you remember how he bowed back and forth, and he was so nervous? And he
was very nervous.
But everybody wanted him to win it.
Yeah, there's way too much. And I thought Kim Caldwell's press conference was one of the best introductory speeches I'd ever heard.
Really? That's strong.
Yeah, I did. I thought it was very good.
Your clip, Caleb and Shanda. Go ahead. One of the strongest you've ever heard in your career.
Yes. Is
Continue,
that okay?
Sir.
Well, yeah, I thought she was both came across as very confident, not just on the question I asked. I thought in general she came across very confident. She was also humble. And she also thanked a lot of people, her players, her coaches, the other schools that hired her. So I think there was some gratitude there. She introduced her family. It wasn't too long and it wasn't too short. I thought it was really well done. And I think, and I wrote about this when I heard a press conference, I could understand why Danny White hired her. She obviously made the same kind of impression when she had her interview. Again, if you're taking that job, you have to come across as confident. And I don't think she was faking it, obviously.
This is so interesting to me because I think it's one of the, and I'm sorry to get really sidetracked here, Caleb, but I want your input on this as well. It's one of the few times that I think the actual interview process has affected who got the job. I think most of the time ADs know beforehand. And the other time I'll go back to is when Kevin Stallings was interviewing for the Tennessee basketball job, and they thought it would be wise, Tennessee Athletic Director Doug Dickey, to take a phone call from Jerry Green in the other room of Stallings' house. Well, it was eavesdropped on, didn't like that, get the hell out of my house sort of thing. But it's the only two times that I can remember what was said in the hiring process having a direct relationship, John, to who ended up getting the job.
Yeah, that was that call you're referring to. There have been so many coaches searches, it's hard to keep them straight. But that was Tim Floyd, I think, that he took a call from. Yeah, Jerry Green wasn't available at the time.
Kevin Stallings was actually in the car waiting for Doug Dickey. But anyway,
Kevin Stallings.
Yeah, I think. I mean, he obviously had an idea. I think he did. He did research. I don't know who was on his search committee, and they put some time into this. I don't. I'm always kind of leery of interview process. Some people interview really well, but they can't do the job. But they're really good at interviewing, and they get a lot of jobs and fail at a lot of jobs. I mean, you look at her track record. I like the idea that she's won at two different places at two different levels, where I assume other schools. I got an email from someone who's familiar with that program, Glenville State, where she played. And it's not as though they have more, based on what he was saying, more research sources than other programs in that conference that she's competing against. So she distinguished herself at two levels, like Bruce Pearl did before he came here. He distinguished himself at several different levels. You win at all those. So that all factored into it. But I think sometimes you can, maybe Danny White knew what he was looking for, and he thought she might be the one, and then she delivered the goods in the interview. And so he said, oh, yeah, I was right. So it kind of confirmed what he was thinking.
Speaking of delivering the goods, Caleb, I'll put this one on you. Her husband looks a lot like Danny White. How much do you think that helped White in the hiring process? I mean, John, it's got to help if you're trying to hire somebody that looks exactly like your spouse, right? Because they're already comfortable with the way you look.
Yeah. Dave, I never thought that, but I'm glad you picked up on it. Did you notice that, Caleb? Did you, when you were watching this, said, "Hey, man, he looks just like Danny White"? Did you think
I did
that?
not think that. All I thought was when she said he gave up his career, he's clearly going to give up coaching. I'm like, this guy is winning. This guy is winning. This guy is, every husband's dream.
This is a true story. When John came to me in, I believe, 2005 to say, would you be interested in working for the News Sentinel? I got on Facebook, and was that a thing back then, or maybe it was MySpace? Anyway, I checked out his wife, and she had red hair, and I was like, I'm in. That's what I did, John? He rolls his eyes. For those on the audio platform, we are actually going to get to some real Tennessee football coverage. How about that right now? It's today's tough question. It's brought to you by friends at the Hemp House.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Just for the record, the eye roll in and of itself is worth going to the YouTube channel and subscribing. John just had. It was fantastic. Today's tough question is about Nico, and it's brought to you by our good friends at Boundless Moving. From the 2-hour minimum to turnkey operations, they've got you covered. Boundless Moving in East Tennessee and in Charlotte as well. That's Boundless Moving. Just Google Boundless Moving. They're my movers. They could be yours too. Not sure if they're helping Kelly Harper out of town, but it doesn't appear as if Tennessee will have to move Nico Iamaleava out of town anytime soon. And I was taken aback a little bit, and I had to explain it to John, so maybe this is a reach, but I was taken aback by the number of national reporters that don't seem aware of Nico. And I also want to be introspective here and ask myself, am I too high on Nico being close to the situation? But John, I think it boils down to this. Is Nico just ultimately already a star? Only one start, one bowl game, but is he just kind of considered a given? And if that's the case, how big is that for Tennessee, John?
Well, it's definitely big for Tennessee, but I think it is a given. I was talking to a friend of mine who's from does radio in Athens, Georgia, and he was talking to me about Nico, and he watched the bowl game, and he'd seen Nico. I mean, he watches a lot of SEC football, and he says, this guy, he's going to be something. I mean, he said this puts Tennessee at a different level. And that's an outsider. That's not someone that's close to the situation. He's very knowledgeable about college football, though. And I think anybody that watches Nico, if you just watch that bowl game, it wasn't the stats. You just watch the guy play. And you can look at him and say, man, why wasn't I mean, he's that good. I don't think you're being close to the situation is giving you a misconception of his ability. I think usually when somebody at that position, a running back can do the same thing, maybe a receiver, but when you just see somebody and you think, if you watch a lot of football and you just see somebody like that, you think, man, this guy's unusual. He's got special talents. It was just very obvious. And I think people thought that, not just me, people thought that when they saw him when he came in those, in this very scant number of plays he had during the regular season. He barely played, but you could just see him play, watch him throw the ball, watch him move around. He's just a really good player.
So, John, I want to draw a comparison on that real quick because, full disclosure, by the time I was 8 when I really kind of started just kind of watching college football, and that was the 96 season. And then I really started watching in the 97 season. So Peyton Manning was already like a household name by that point. But let's go back to heading into 95 after Manning's freshman year. He's about to be a sophomore. I know how the coaching staff hyped him up during the 97 season for the Heisman. But how would you compare the way the coaching staff hyped up Peyton Manning and going into 95 versus how this one is? I would say not really hyping Nico up at all. It seems like they're keeping things very close to the vest.
I almost think, John, playing along those lines, I almost think they've got a little bit of a secret. But I mean, they don't. But coaches sometimes can be off base a little bit.
Well, I don't know how they could have a secret. I mean, there's been so much written and so much said about this guy. He was a 5-star recruit. He's gotten quite an NIL deal. There was all kind of speculation about that. And then you've got some video on him now. No, I think if you go back even before last season, Josh Heupel was talking about, hey, if we had to turn the reins over to Nico, we feel confident in that. He didn't do it, but he brought that up. I look at it differently, Caleb. I think they just know it's so obvious. There's no point in even talking about it. They don't need to hype him because they're just convinced. Anybody that sees this guy, it'd be like, watching any great player. You don't have to say, boy, that Patrick Mahomes is, the Chiefs might win it again. That guy's pretty good.
He's not bad.
Yeah, he's okay. He's not just a caretaker.
But
I think Josh Heupel's shovel got tired, Caleb. I think
that's why I want to.
He shoveled us all this quarterback info to serve his own narrative. He wasn't going to try it to say, oh, it's a real quarterback competition with Merklinger and Gaston Moore.
No. But that's where I wanted to draw the comparison. That's why I wanted to draw to 95, because my understanding is that the coaches were going out of their way to make Peyton Manning a household name, weren't they, before his sophomore year? And
but
pushing him as much as possible.
Yeah, excuse me, Caleb. But see, Peyton Manning, again, kind of like Nico, came in with so much fanfare, even in 94, because, see, he started 7 games in 94, and by the end of 94, he was a star. Now, back then, I think it was different, too. I think they saw him as a Heisman Trophy candidate, and I think now there's so many games on TV. You don't really need a Heisman campaign anymore. There's so much, everybody sees everybody. So I just think it was different back then. But yeah, they did promote him, and the media relations department did promote him, and it's not necessary to do that now. So I don't think with Nico, I don't think they're trying to downplay anything. And if Josh Heupel really thinks he's going to send him out there for the first game and teams go, oh, where'd this guy come from? He might be disappointed. I don't think it's a secret weapon.
No, I think there's a part of him, though, that wants to go hang about 375 yards in the first half against Chattanooga and kind of be like, look at what I've been working on, everybody.
Yeah, and what's going to be the reaction of so many people? Why did this guy play last year?
No, it's going to be Heisman or bust 2024, baby.
I mean, I'm calling that, so y'all can call me crazy, but I'm already there with Nico. So I think Josh Heupel put, when you talk about all chips in the table, he's been preparing to put all of his chips in the table for the 2024 season. I'm not sure if that's smart. I don't know if that's wise, but that's how he's tooled his roster. And I think that's why Nico, I think, is, if he's not insanely transcendently great this year, then Tennessee's future may be in jeopardy with Josh Heupel.
John.
Wow. And Caleb, usually he doesn't deal in extremes, so that's kind of an odd take for him. He's usually kind of, a little bit cautious in what he says. So he'd come on that strong. I think it really makes an impression. But I will say, to piggyback off that, I will say that Tennessee's got him for 2 years, 2 more years, we figure, if he's as good as
if they can keep him a secret, though, they could get enough NIL money to keep him for 5 more, I think is the number with the COVID year. Does that still count? Hell,
yeah. Well, he was born during COVID, so it counts.
Right.
Yeah, that's a COVID year. If you were born during the COVID pandemic,
if you
get all those years.
Yes, if you have the baby vaccination, you get the 18 years, so you could actually be 38 years old and still be playing college football.
Yeah, and then you get a hardship waiver.
And then he'd be too old for the NFL, but Jimmy Haslam would still draft him on the Browns as his number 1 pick. Oh, I'm sorry.
Or hire him as the lead masseuse. All right, John, you were saying?
I don't even remember what we were talking about.
Okay, so if Nico's already a star, what do you define that as? Because I think that's what we're saying. He's already a star. So he's a star. How do you define a star?
No, I agree. What I was getting ready to say is, based on what Caleb said, Tennessee needs to make the playoffs with Nico at quarterback. I think that's significant. You need to make the playoffs with this guy at quarterback, because I'm not sure the next quarterback you have will be as good as he is. So this is your window. Now, Tennessee didn't win a national championship. There was no playoff. Tennessee didn't win a national title with Peyton Manning at quarterback, so they won it with T. Martin. So you could say, well, they could still win one. That's right. But to me, in a 12-team playoff, this is a window of opportunity when you have Nico as a quarterback. And another thing that Caleb says, that Josh Heupel is all in on this in 24. Give some examples of that, Caleb, with the roster, why you think he's all in on 24.
I think it was the way they went about NIL this past offseason, where they did things like they rather than go try to get new talent in the portal, they were thinking, let's up the money to make sure we keep Cooper Mays and Javonte Spraggins and Brew McCoy, because the chemistry factor is there. I think last year I think he was much more willing to work with a lot of newcomers that he put into the system last year in 2023, i.e. Dante Thornton and people like that, to try to see. I think he used a lot of 2023 with people like Dante Thornton specifically, and even John Campbell Jr. On the line, almost as he was experimenting in the season to see where he could move guys around, largely because I thought he knew he didn't have a national title caliber team last year, particularly given his quarterback. So I think he wasn't afraid.
Can I jump on Caleb's bandwagon? Something that's a little bit more difficult to put a finger on. I think that they thought that the team's culture would continue to be really strong if Joe Milton could make it through the year. And I don't think they wanted to mess up 24 for maybe a win or two more in 23. That, I know, John, that sounds bizarro to you, but I think that's something that was there.
Yeah, I'm not I think coaches need to be more about winning than culture. You could say the two go together, but the best guys play. The players know who the best players are. They know that better than anyone. But I don't want to dwell on the past. Tennessee won 9 games, and moving on past the Joe Milton era, as brief as it was.
But it was something.
Yeah.
Will never be forgotten.
It was, it was.
Yes.
It was
and
awesome.
also the
whole lot of long screens, wasn't it?
The other big part, though,
you see that throw? Go. I'm sorry, kid.
What does Joe Milton and a 9-foot doorway have in common? A lot of long screens.
Oh my gosh.
I'll just stay tuned, because there's more of that to come, including.
Well, the one last bit of evidence I wanted to give too is, notice he for 3 years accepted the level of poor play from his secondary, and then this past December he just shoved them all into the transfer portal and said, "Get out. we need some guys now." I mean, Josh Heupel legitimately did that. He let, for 3 years, his defensive backs be horrendous, and then he sent them all out the door this past year.
I just don't think coaches, I think they want to seize the moment. I think they want to win every game they can. I don't think there was some grand plan going on here. And then they're saying, oh, meanwhile, back in the laboratory, we're building a 6'6" quarterback that will win the Heisman Trophy. But we're going to keep him secret until we get to that Chattanooga game in 24 and then show the world.
They did build him in a lab, though.
While Billy Napier may not make it until December. With John Adams, I'm Dave Hooker. His appearance is always brought to you by our good friend at Joe Newberg Collision Center.
in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare!
Welcome to Varner Ford in Clinton, where every turn meets new possibilities and every mile celebrates cutting-edge innovation. Elevate your journey with our pre-owned selection of quality vehicles. 2021 Ford Mustang 5.0 GT, 33,540. 2021 GMC Sierra 1500 Denali 4x4, 46,980. 2022 Ford Expedition King Ranch 4x4, 67,550. Local you trust, pre-owned vehicles you can afford. Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
All that talk in the last segment. Kemp Stevens just absolutely putting John on press conference parole got me a little nervous.
Yeah,
John, I don't know. I mean, to be in that type of press conference setting, I know that's uncomfortable for us all, right?
Dave.
Yes, sir.
What are you talking about?
Maybe and I'm sorry, I said Kim Stevens. I have a good friend whose name is Kim Stevens. It's Kim Caldwell. So just go ahead and correct me whenever I'm wrong.
Stevens is her original last name. That's the funny part.
I know, which makes it odd for me because well, it's not the same Kim Stevens though, but I know a Kim Stevens, which makes it very confusing for me. So Kim Stevens Caldwell, maybe we'll do that and that'll clarify my issue.
They know whom you were talking about, Dave.
Yes, it's time for 4 Downs. It's 4 Downs brought to you right now, and it's brought to you by our good friends at Dynasty Pools and Spas. You can jump in the hot tub with the one, the only Cooper Race.
4 Downs brought to you by Dynasty Spas, the most comfortable spas made in the United States of America, right here in East Tennessee. Drop in for the all-new showroom in Athens. Dynasty Spas, perfect for all 4 seasons. 4 Downs, presented by Off the Hook Sports.
I think we can all agree that the worst mistake in the history of athletics at the University of Tennessee was sending 15 people that all played defensive tackle out on the field at Baton Rouge against LSU. I think we can all agree that was the worst single mistake in Tennessee football history. Okay, and I'm standing by that, Chuck Smith. That's on you. But I want to pull up one that I think is comparable because the reason that's so unbelievable is substitution patterns, John, are like tying your shoes in the morning, right?
Yeah, usually.
I mean, we're not talking about doing those little, what are they called, French cuff things. We're not talking about that. We're talking about tying a shoe.
Yeah, it's considered pretty perfunctory. Nobody has to think a lot about it. You do it without thinking. In fact, some people tie their shoes and then they walk a few steps and wonder, hey, did I tie my shoes? I better
don't
check.
even know. It was.
I
It
didn't
was
even
so
notice.
easy.
Yeah.
Did I go in the game? I don't even know. Well, that's what's happening at the University of Florida. They're not sure if they're in the game or not. Billy Napier, Mr. Detail Oriented, did this
In the spring
over.
game.
What?
I said in the spring game.
In the spring game. Okay. Billy Napier did this in the spring game. By the way, huge crowd on hand, as you can't get enough of those Gators in the spring.
Looks like Vanderbilt's game. Where are those cranes?
It looks like Billy. That was a section specifically held for Billy Napier's family. So what do you get? What do I get in this contract, University of Florida? Well, you get 3 sections for the spring game.
Not pictured are Billy Napier's 3,000 auxiliary staff members.
He's trying to, for those that don't know, he's trying to copy Nick Saban on that. All right, but they send 10 people out on a field goal block. I don't want to over exaggerate this, but this to me is something that if I'm a coach, it doesn't happen in a game. It doesn't happen in practice. It doesn't happen ever if you've been there for any amount of time. It's one thing if this happens a couple of weeks. Am I making too much out of this, John, to say that this is pure goofiness and not a good sign for Billy Napier?
Yeah, I think you're exaggerating a little bit, Dave. I think people are gotten very negative about Billy Napier based on some things that have happened the first 2 seasons or not. They don't see a national championship unfolding there. I looked at it. Yeah, I'm serious. I looked at it a little differently. I thought it was awesome, the fact that both the kicker and the holder were out there.
You can't. That's true. Because even though we're talking about field goal block, you can't even kick if you don't have a kicker out there, Caleb.
I know. And you still could have made the kick with just one guy short, as long as the kicker and holder were out there.
Caleb, maybe we're being too hard on the whole group. They still could have gotten a block with 10 guys.
Well, if you go search Florida, if you guys search Florida Twitter, I'm dead serious. Some of them now, many Florida fans are like, they want Billy Napier fired tomorrow. They've been wanting him fired for the past 4 months. Another contingency, though, and this probably comes more from SEC people, because for some reason people in the SEC that cover it as a whole love Billy Napier. They just think he's the smartest thing in the world. Apparently, guys, this was an experiment thing they were doing. They were just experimenting with some. I'm joking. Okay. But some people think that on Twitter, that this was some sort of experimentation, because you experiment with having 10 guys on the field. Now, this is the Billy Napier who, again, the reason it's a big deal is they lost a game last year to Utah because of a substitution infraction. They gave Utah a first down, and they got it on a punt return that allowed Utah to go down and score a touchdown. And Billy Napier said at the time, well, we have 3 different punt units that go on, and the wrong one went on that time or something. And in my mind, I'm like, maybe he is detail-oriented. Yeah, that's my point. Maybe he is detail-oriented. Maybe the problem is he has too many details.
Maybe. I mean, Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry. How about the Fire Opals, the Tennessee tradition? RickTerryJewelry.com, RickTerryJewelry.com. And I'm sorry, I failed to get to first down. Cooper Mays, what do people need to do?
Hit like and subscribe.
There we go.
Coop here. First down.
Billy Napier, will he be at Florida in 2025 as we're previewing the upcoming season 1 year from now? What say you, John?
No, excuse me. I don't think he'll make it through the 24 season. You take a look at Florida's schedule, you look at its depth chart. I just don't see it happening for the Gators. And I mean, he's going in with back-to-back losing seasons. Yeah, I know. I think if Jeremy Foley were the AD still, Billy Napier would have been fired after year 2.
There's no question.
Or during his second season.
I agree. I think he was pretty hardcore. I think he was one of the better athletic directors I ever covered.
Yeah, and he did. If he made a mistake, he was quick to correct it. Get me that whiteout. Does anybody know what whiteout is anymore?
No, I just used an eraser. Caleb?
I'm with both you guys. He's fired midseason, and a lot of it is his fault because of how much details he throws in. I think he makes things way too complicated. But part of it's not his fault because I think the Florida administration right now is very incompetent behind him. I mean, the way that their NIL mismanagement is embarrassing. There are just so many deep-seated issues with the program right now that this reminds me of the Derek Dooley years, where yes, Derek Dooley was bad, but it ain't like Derek Dooley had any brains like in the administration behind him either at the time. So,
what down, Coop?
Cooper Mays here, second down.
What's the magic number that Tennessee fans, Florida State fans, Miami fans, other fans that want bad things to happen to Florida should root for? What's the number of wins that keeps Billy Napier his job, but doesn't win him a championship, which I don't think any of us think can happen? But what is it? 8 wins keeps him a job for one more year. John, is that what the Florida rivals should be rooting for?
Yeah, I guess I don't see how after your third season at Florida and you win 7 games, they throw a parade for you. I just don't see that happening. I think they probably opposing teams, Miami, Florida State, Tennessee, all the rivals should just say, we want to beat Florida so badly that they will consider giving up football and we won't have to worry about them in the future. But no, you're not keeping Billy Napier around any longer. That's just futile thinking.
Well, wait a second. Let me play this game with you. So 8 wins wouldn't do it?
Yeah, I guess 8 wins, but they're not going to
John
win
doesn't think 8
games.
wins is possible. Yeah.
No, I don't. I don't think 8 wins is possible.
Yeah. It's kind of like saying I could swim the Pacific if you gave me enough time, but I don't know how to swim. Caleb, is there any magic number? That was my best analogy ever. Just
really, I like the
25 years of
screen
doing it.
better. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
it's
Kevin.
I do think that I agree that 8 wins would be what other fans want. And I know this because people who wanted to see Tennessee suffer, the worst thing that ever happened to Tennessee was 2015. They were 3-4, and then they went out. You remember this, John, with Butch Jones to finish 9-4, and that bought Butch Jones 2 more years at Tennessee. And then Jeremy Pruitt in 2019 starts the year 1-4 and finishes very strong and finishes 8-5. And the whole Tennessee contingency was, oh, we got a future with Jeremy Pruitt. Look at how he finished the season against really, really bad teams.
And what did Peyton Manning say?
They're like, that is total bullshit. Tennessee center Cooper Mays here, third down.
All right. The University of Florida.
What did Peyton say? I didn't hear that.
They're like, that is total bullshit.
Yeah, that's what he said. He just likes to go. I mean, he goes off on a tangent. I can't stop the guy. Getting back to the topic at hand. So the University of Florida, I'm not going to ask you how that job should really be perceived anymore. What I'm going to ask you specifically is Billy Napier, Derek Dooley, Butch Jones, or is he Jeremy Pruitt? In other words, Dooley's the guy that hangs around long enough and you think that, hey, you might be able to get it done. You're in a bad situation. And then you hire a Butch who is able to win enough games to hang around. And then you hire a Pruitt where you realize, man, things are really bad. It's time to make a change. So in the evolution of Florida football, what will Billy Napier prove to be, John? Which coach?
I think he will prove to be Derek Dooley because Derek Dooley and Caleb already mentioned this about his support brain trust wasn't real significant. He didn't have much support and he inherited a horrible situation. Tennessee had 2 coaching changes back-to-back years. I think Napier stepped into a really bad situation at a place where you're supposed to win a lot of games and didn't have a great depth chart, and then he made it worse. So I would compare him to the other 2 guys. First of all, you want to be Butch Jones, you got to be able to make your face turn red and purple on the sidelines in the same game, preferably in the same possession. And with Jeremy Pruitt, if you know how to wear a COVID mask, you can't beat Jeremy Pruitt.
Very true.
I'll
Also,
turn it over to you.
Napier. In Napier's defense, he doesn't have the annoying, cringy sayings that Butch Jones had that just made me just want to, it drove me crazy. And he's not going to
63 strain.
Yeah, 63 straight. That's the weird part about the Napier thing. It's like they almost just found him on the road 2 streets over from Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. And they just hired him.
And when
it's not even exciting.
When it was, I mean, a part of me, like, yes, he makes mistakes, but a part of me does feel bad for him. And that's why I'm with John. I get the Dooley vibe because a part of me did feel bad for Dooley, honestly. And I know a lot of people didn't, but I understand the situations there. But the other part where they're similar is, I mean, John, you probably remember this, Dave, you made too, that 2011 team. Yes, they lost to Kentucky, but that was the toughest schedule Tennessee football's ever played that year. They had to play Arkansas, LSU, and Alabama when those were the 3 best teams in the country. And that's what Florida's dealing with Napier.
What down, Coop?
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. 4th down.
Here's who Florida is going to hire when they get rid of Billy Napier in 60 seconds. And it's brought to you by our good friends at Dynasty Pools and Spas. Here, you know, the best thing about Dynasty Pools and Spas is that they've got it all taken care of. What does that mean? Well, you stop by their showroom and check out their fantastic selection of top-notch spas in that showroom in Athens. Make your pick and get ready, because Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers within 125 miles of that location in Athens, that fantastic showroom. They've got the cover lift, steps, chemicals, and everything you need. Delivery at no extra charge. They're just down the road in Athens. You pick the spa you want, and it'll be there for you. Oftentimes discounted with military and first responders discounts. Also blemish models, or just mention Off the Hook Sports. That's Off the Hook Sports for $500 off. There's a discount for you on spas made right here in East Tennessee. Support local. Dynasty Pools and Spas also has the best chemicals for you and your spa and your pool. No fillers, just the chemicals made right here in East Tennessee. Support local. Dynasty Pools and Spas, $500 off if you mention Off the Hook Sports. $500 off if you mention Off the Hook Sports. Dynasty Pools and Spas, dynastypoolsandspas.com. What in the world about Lane Kiffin and the University of Florida wouldn't work, John?
Oh, I think it would work. But I think if Lane Kiffin is smart, he'll stay where he is. If he doesn't, I think he's shown he can win big at Ole Miss. I don't know how much he can win long term. But yeah, Florida definitely should go try to hire Lane Kiffin, and no doubt about that. He not only has a proven track record, his teams play exciting offense. He's just he fits that fan base. But if Lane looks at the history of that program, Urban Meyer and Steve Spurrier, Charlie Pell did a nice job rebuilding.
They can eat their own.
Yeah, I just think they had 2 really good coaches, great coaches, but otherwise Florida just has struggled. I mean, you talk about all the potential, you talk so much about recruiting, the recruiting base, but the other side of that is every program in America recruits Florida. So there's a lot of competition for everybody. So, but I think Lane Kiffin would be number 1 on my list. I mean, I'd make sure, check with Urban Meyer to make sure he might want to make a comeback.
Ouch, really?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Lane Kiffin would work.
Yeah, Caleb, I want you to follow that up. I want to tell people really quick, Quality Tire Pro. The Eberle family has been serving Chattanooga community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service, automotive, brakes, alignment. Stop in, say, hey, Bo, Off the Hook Sports sent me. Hey, Bo, Off the Hook Sports sent me on Cherokee Boulevard or online at qualitytirepros.com. What did you think about the Urban Meyer? And who else would be a good candidate if Florida's in the coaching market a year from now? Caleb?
I would, with you, Lane Kiffin would be my top choice. try to get Urban Meyer, but I'm just going to tell you, I think Urban Meyer is a snake and is jockeying for Steve Sarkisian's job at Texas, and he's going to try to get Steve Sarkisian fired with his commentary on Fox. I would also,
jeez,
I actually kind of believe that conspiracy one.
Yes, I would also.
Let's take a second. Do you think that one is?
That's crazy.
You think that's a little much, John?
Yeah, I think it's a little much. I'm sure, but I think Urban Meyer actually might be done as a coach. He realized it's not good for his health. He's got a lot of evidence of that now, but
right. So
I think he's
continue on in his humanitarian work and
he wants to spend a lot of time with his family and his extended family and even people he doesn't know. But I think Urban Meyer. I mean, he's guaranteed wins. You're in the playoff. You hire Urban Meyer. There's no doubt.
Here's where, and John, I get your point about the history of Florida, but I think the Gators are on the cusp of being as easy of a recruiting job as LSU, and here's why I say that. We have T. Scott Jones come on our show, local attorney, and I talking to him and talking to some other people. I think national media wants this ACC grant of rights agreements to expire because they want to see Florida State and Clemson with the big boys. I don't think they have a way out of it, though. So I think Florida State and Miami are stuck in the ACC for the next 15 years as it falls way behind of a conference. So I think Florida used to have to compete with Florida State and Miami for Florida recruits. I think Florida will be able to recruit the state by itself now without any competition from other local states. So I think Florida is actually on the cusp of exploding as a place with the right coach. That's why some people are bringing it on the message boards. Another one is Deion Sanders. Deion Sanders could get all the best athletes in Florida to go to Florida, and he could just roll the football out and watch them go win a national title.
I don't know about winning a national title, but I want to have that conversation, John. Even Philip Fulmer would say it. It's about the Jimmies and Joes, not the X's and O's. If Deion Sanders,
profound.
Yes. Deion Sanders did go someplace like a Florida where he could have basically his pick of the litter, because you can at Colorado. You're lucky to win occasional recruiting battles. You're not pick of the litter type of program. If he were to do that, how much success could he have in Florida? Or do you think ultimately the coaching and the X's and O's is a big factor?
Well, I think it's a factor. I think assembling a staff's a factor. I think how you manage your players is a factor. I'm not sold on Deion yet. I mean, he's created a lot of interest in Colorado football. Good for him, because there was no interest in it. And he became a national story. He's good copy, but I just I'm not sold on him winning championships at all, no matter where he is.
No.
But remember, if you're in a state with talent, you can be Larry Coker or Ed Orgeron and win a championship.
That's a good point. Or Les Miles.
Or Les Miles.
I wouldn't put Larry Coker in with those guys, though. I think he knew a little more football.
I would agree with that. Speaking of a guy that may or may not know football, I don't know that he knows how to handle getting his dream job. John, what did you make of a young man getting his dream job? And we say congratulations to him, but then do we want to pull the video clip up first to show John this? Mark Pope is now your new head coach of your Kentucky Wildcats. What do you think of that change going from John Calipari to Mark Pope? What should Kentucky fans think of that? Because right now they want to attack me because I think it's a step down. You?
Well, I was astonished to hear of a Mormon Pope. I thought that was strictly Catholicism at work there. It totally caught me off guard, Dave.
That's pretty good. So you pray to your wife, I guess, in that situation. I don't know who you're supposed to pray to.
So, but John, here's why I wanted to get
one of your wives. One of your wives.
I've gone through Pope's background and already think it's a bad hire. And now I was convinced because he did this when he was introduced. Let me just show you what he's holding up real quick when he gets off the bus at Rutbury. Because, they decided to do this.
I want to play this. But I remind you that John's time is brought to you by our good friends at Newbrook Collision Center.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Okay, so run this out there. There we go.
All right.
Mark Pope getting off. For those that are on our audio platform, they appear to be in Rupp.
They drove a bus into Rupp Arena.
They drive a bus in there like it's some sort of monster bus rally. And Mark Pope gets off of the bus. John, I want to make sure you can see it. Do you have visual confirmation?
John?
John?
Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and play it. All right. Here's what it's
copyright violation that will get listed. But anyway,
I'll turn it all down. Wait, you see what he's holding? You see what he's holding?
Oh look! Oh look at that, John. What's he holding? John, let's get some play-by-play. Coming in from the bus, headed to the court. John, what's he holding? Can you tell?
He is holding the 1996 national championship trophy for the team that he played on, as if that is somehow a qualification for him to get the head coaching job at Kentucky.
John, I'm going to do the research really quick. The prospects that he will be going after, some of their parents will have been born when Kentucky won that 96 national championship. So I understand the recruiting implications can be monstrous for the Big Blue Nation.
Well, what impressed me about that video, I thought it was a contest. As all these various people got off the bus, I think they wanted the fans to identify which one is Mark Pope. I couldn't tell. I thought, is it that guy? No, it's that one. Oh no, I think looks more like that one. Looks more like Mark Pope. It was really bizarre, I thought.
Yes, and he came off last, which he may end up being among teams in the SEC. There's all kinds of rumors coming out of Kentucky about why perhaps you had John Calipari make that sudden move. What was your read on the move? What will he do at Arkansas? Because, man, he pulled a Kiffin on the Cats. He left them timing-wise in a bad position.
Yeah, I have one more thing to say on Mark Pope. Can I still do that?
Yes. Mark Pope. Stick with the Mark Pope. That's good.
Yeah. I mean, we could go on after that, but can you get ready to cringe, Dave? Can you prepare yourself to cringe?
I'm ready to cringe.
I think it was an attempt by Kentucky because when Calipari there was a lack of unity among the fan base, and some people. It was still back. I think Kentucky, what it's trying to do is unify here. So it's trying to bring together the Mormons and the Catholics by hiring a Mormon Pope. I'm not letting go of that, Dave.
No, I can tell you're not.
Well, I mean,
we'll be having this conversation in 5 years from now, like Constantine Ritzman.
That's hot.
To be fair, I think Kentucky I think it got nixed down. They've been they can't get rid of the child bride laws that still exist in Kentucky. So Mormon, might. I mean, I'm sorry. Bad joke.
What the hell just happened, Caleb? A child spousal joke.
Explain, Caleb. Explain.
Yes, go for it, Caleb.
I know at least until 2018, I don't know if it's changed, but at least until 2018 in Kentucky, you could marry off your daughter before she was even a teenager without her consent.
To today's tough question, would you marry off your daughter for a 5-star prospect?
In Kentucky, you could.
Anywhere in Kentucky?
There were no laws against marrying off your daughter. You couldn't marry your daughter, but you could marry her off. Like you could arrange a marriage with her and somebody else until 2018, I believe is when it was. Now, even though
Are we all sure about
the
this?
The state has evolved since then. That's 6 years ago.
Since 20. And guys, there's a lot of states that are like that, so I'm not going to try to take a shot at just Kentucky because there are some.
Is Tennessee like that? Can you do that in Tennessee, Caleb?
Let's look it up. Tennessee child bride law.
No, we're not going to do that. No, we're not going to do that. The Mark Pope hire, how can that possibly be good? And listen, Tennessee fans in every SEC school, they've been down this path before where you get jilted by your coach and you're going to say the next coach is great. But I can't find anybody in my phone, my Rolodex, that knows basketball that tells me this is a great hire, John.
No, I just wonder if Kentucky even considered bringing back Rick Pitino.
Thank you. It's exactly what I said. I would have made the phone call. I would have been done with it. I would have gotten 4 or 5 good years out of Pitino, who I think will be 71. It would have been done. I would have had the call made before Arkansas could hold their stupid press conference in which John Calipari looks like inducted for the 1996 Chicago Bulls.
Yeah, it's funny. So, John, the funny thing about that is many Kentucky fans, their selling point on Mark Pope is that Rick Pitino says he's going to be a great coach. Because what do you expect Rick Pitino to say about one of his former players? Like, oh, I don't think he's going to get the job done.
Caleb, Rick Pitino said Wade Houston was going to be a great coach.
Yes. That came up. And John, what's the likelihood that this happened? That a Pitino call was made and he said, sounds good. Work that out. $10 million a year. And they said, whoa, we thought we might get you on the cheap. You know, you're trying to rebuild your career. And he says, no, I don't think so. And then they went to Pope. Does anybody want to bet that that's what happened? Because I'll lay that bet down. Brought to you by Bet US.
I don't think that's what happened, Dave. I don't think they call Rick Pitino. If they did, I think it would be a done deal, and he'd be the coach at Kentucky, and fans would all be excited.
Instead, they got Pope.
And when people got off the bus, the fans would have known, oh, yeah, that's Rick Pitino. They wouldn't have had to guess, well, which one is Mark Pope?
He's put on some weight since he played here and lost some hair.
Yeah, he's so big.
Yeah. So John, I wanted to just know your quick thoughts on it because we made fun of it last week, and Arkansas fans are now mad at us because I thought that press conference they held for Calipari was the goofiest thing I ever saw. And they had all these former players at Kentucky that they touted who said they committed to play for Calipari. And in my mind, I'm like, these are all the players that, like, they're famous now for underachieving at Kentucky. Because they didn't have Anthony Davis, the one guy that won him a national title. They were naming John Wall and people like that. And I'm like, this doesn't really help your case for Calipari, does it?
It's almost as though you're trying to sell Arkansas fans on what Kentucky fans had to believe in.
Yes.
We're going to have the number one class in the country. If that's the number one you're going for, yeah, that might be a good move. Hey, we got the number one recruiting class. Game over.
Yeah, that is exactly what they were going for.
Yeah,
John,
you're going to get these great players. You won't win that much, but you'll get the great players. But you won't hang any more banners.
Seems like the worst time to see Calipari walk through the door now that NIL is completely legitimate. Seems like that's like, oh, bleep. You know, you had the guy, and maybe if they'd hired him 5 years or 10 years later, there wouldn't be the hurt feelings now because he hasn't won at a high enough level. Just seems like you're getting rid of the used car salesman right when the used car sales are about to go through the roof.
Yeah, I mean, Kentucky now is you can give a player a racehorse. It's legal.
That's right. Not even Godfather style.
No, he can be you can be a basketball player / jockey.
Is John Calipari the coach most likely to leave a horse head in a opposing athletic director's bed?
That's a pretty good call, Dave. I'm trying to think of somebody else.
I have my moments. John, get out of here.
I don't know if I'd cross Slick Rick though. There could be some bad things happen too.
Well, and Urban Meyer had a certain guy he could call while he was at Florida.
No, he just did it himself. He's a Russian hitman. Look at him.
Thank you, John. You're
All
great,
right,
man.
see you guys.
John Adams of the Knoxville
Have a good one,
News
John.
Signal. His appearance brought to you by our good friends at Newbert Collision Center. Coming up on the program this day in Tennessee football history. Somebody said Kim Caldwell cooked this clown. Now, that's what the point we were making earlier. You might have just tuned in. I thought Kim Caldwell handled a very fair question exceptionally well. Do you have to make changes to your offense? And talking to John, this offense is like Heupel's offense compared to other up-tempo offenses in the country in football. In other words, it's another level. So do you have to tweak things? I think is a really fair question. And I think she handled it really well. I would have liked to hear a follow-up, but Tennessee's press conferences aren't set up like that. Just to say, do you think you have to offer any sort of alterations to your offense to compete with better athletes? I would have liked to have heard that, but you just don't hear that in press conferences anymore.
Yeah, no, you don't hear that at all. So I think that I knew that John, like knowing John, was not going to roast Kim Caldwell for that answer. That was a good answer. And it was also a good question. And it's a very legitimate question. I mean, where John will roast you and where I would roast you and where Dave would roast you and where Jimmy would roast you would be if they ask a good question or a question that's on everybody's mind, and then the coach lies and then gets mad at you for asking the question, i.e. Butch Jones saying, what do we want from our media, when he was asked if Shy Tuttle got into a fight. And
I thought her press conference was one of the, if not the best. I'll agree with John. Now that I thought about it, I thought it was one of the most introductory press conferences, one of the best ones Tennessee's ever had. Caleb, with the way she answered that question, with the way she paid respect to Pat Summitt. Listen, you could have screwed that press conference up in a lot of different ways. You could have come across as too cocky. She didn't. She came across as confident, not cocky. You could have come across as meek, which would have been bad. She certainly didn't. You could have not paid enough respect to Pat Summitt, which she didn't. She paid a great amount of respect to Pat Summitt. I thought Tennessee should be excited about that hire. I just don't know at the end of the day my thoughts on it, if she's qualified to have that job, but we'll determine that here in the next 2 or 3 years.
She understands better than anybody how, and you could tell this, and this is what's so crucial with legends like Pat Summitt. You can uphold their legacy without trying to be them, because the truth of the matter was Holly Rolick and Kelly Harper tried to be Pat Summitt. And the truth was all those mics that Alabama hired in the 90s were trying to be Bear Bryant. And
so Timothy, if I can go to the message board, we don't have as much of an opportunity since we're busy to do this, but he says it's a stupid question. Do you think it would work everywhere she went? Well, I don't know. See, I don't know the intricacies of her offense. And do you have to make adjustments? Did Josh Heupel have to make slight adjustments when going from a UCF level to a Tennessee level? I wouldn't think so, because there's not the monstrous difference that there might be with women's basketball. But it wouldn't surprise me, Caleb, if she said, yeah, I got to tweak a little bit of things here. We're able to take advantage of situations in which we have better athletes. And now there's going to be situations in which the other team has better athletes. So I would have liked a little bit of a clarification there. So that's why I agree. That's why I didn't think it was a stupid question, but not to belabor the point, Timothy. Sorry.
Right. And I mean, to be fair, she probably wants to be a little bit quiet about personnel anyway, because she doesn't know what she's really working with right now. So she doesn't want to be like, well, these players aren't good enough for my system, and the players I had before weren't good enough for what I'm trying to do. So she may have a philosophy that she wants to implement it without throwing anybody under the bus.
True. And remember, this all happened in like 24 hours. So has she even seen tape of all of her players yet by the time she's flying everywhere? I mean, I'm sure they tried to get her an iPad, but for goodness sake, I mean, it could be more difficult than you think. I mean, this is all happening very, very fast. I thought she did a great job. Love having John on. That's brought to you by Newbert Collision Center. Want to remind you that our friends at BetUS can take care of you with an incredible discount that you will receive 125% deposit bonus for your first 3 deposits. That's pretty awesome.
America's favorite sportsbook and casino. Live betting and racebook. We're celebrating 30 years with a historic offer. A 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits. Plus 10% gambler's insurance. Get started today. BetUS, where the game begins.
All right, coming up, it'll be This Day in Tennessee Sports History. And also on the program, Elijah Herring's outie, apparently. Also, Tennessee has a new Dalton Knecht, perhaps. That's where Caleb wants to go on this. I thought it was pretty strong. The latest on the Vols in the transfer portal in basketball and football coming up This Day in Tennessee Sports History is Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This is a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
Ford Mustang 5.0 GT, 33,540. 2021 GMC Sierra 1500 Denali 4x4, 46,980. 2022 Ford Expedition King Ranch 4x4, 67,550. Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TriStarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
That's hot.
Yes, it is. Here we go. Welcome back to the program. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, and I'm going to go ahead and play this.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
If you're on one of our audio platforms, you need to get over to YouTube as soon as you can, or go to TriStarHatsCo.com, TriStarHatsCo.com. It's on our video platform right now, in particular YouTube and the Twitter. So you check out TriStarHatsCo.com, use the promo code HOOKED, that's hooked, and you get 10% off fantastic apparel with that TriStar hat logo on it. It is incredibly awesome. Provided to you by our good friends at Apex Apparel Group Design. If you tell them Dave Hooker at Off the Hook Sports sent you for your business, just call Tyler at 865-919-3001, 865-919-3001. You get 15% off your first order. Apex Apparel. They do clothes, design, brand, embroidery. They do it all. They're the call for your business. 15% off. Just mention offthehooksports.com. Elijah Herring. I think I can almost say what you're going to say before you say it. Caleb, we specifically at our 3:45 a.m. production meeting said, I don't want to know your real opinion on Elijah Herring because I think I know it and I want to hear it fresh. So I want to hear it fresh. Elijah Herring enters the transfer portal. Tennessee fans should be blank.
Unmoved. Well, wait. Yeah. Sorry.
Actually, I would probably roll with that one. That one's pretty good.
Well, yeah. Sorry, I just wanted to start this over real quick. Yeah, Elijah Herring has entered the transfer portal. Tennessee's leading linebacker last year, and Tennessee fans should be unmoved by it. Not a big deal.
Okay. Why? Because that sounds crazy in and of itself to lose a guy not only to the transfer portal, but to lose him out of spring, right?
Yes, it does. And I think what happened is pretty obvious. Elijah Herring, I'm saying this nicely, guys, because quite honestly, Elijah Herring is a guy I respect. It was a very early commitment to Josh Heupel's team. He wanted to play for Tennessee. His issues last year were not lack of effort. They weren't lack of toughness. They weren't lack of mental toughness. They were lack of too small, too slow to play Mike linebacker. He just didn't have enough lateral quickness, and it's something there was no way he was going to get that fixed. So because of that, he now with Keenan Peely returning and Jeremiah Thielander, who had emerged during spring ball, I just think that there wasn't a avenue for him to play. He certainly wasn't going to be able to play Sam linebacker because he doesn't have a lot of straight line speed either. And given that fact, I think Elijah Herring entering the portal, Tennessee fans should be unmoved. If anything, wish Elijah, this is one of those where this guy's not running, he's not taking NIL money, wish him the best. As Tennessee builds more depth than they have at linebacker, I think that's this story here. There just wasn't going to be a spot for him on the roster. And, it's one of those, I know I sound like the whole, I'm such a bleeding heart here, but Dave, those guys that you just have to kind of move on from, because even though they're doing everything right, they're doing everything they should do. They just can't do what they need to do once you get the depth you need at a certain position.
Well, I could see him play for 30 seconds. I could tell you the guy wasn't a middle linebacker or an outside linebacker, either or, in the SEC. I said at the time, I think I said the very week that he started playing in place of Keenan Peely for a short time, which wasn't immediately. They tried to get Arian Carter to that gig, and that didn't work out because he got banged up. So he couldn't play. Now, he could play defensive end, but Tennessee's deep there. So my question to you and the message board, is it a little too hardcore if Heupel says you are doing everything right and you played out of position and you should have started the defensive end and we have mishandled your playing status and now there's not a place for you? Is that okay for Josh Heupel to say you're gone, you're outie? Are we at that point where that is acceptable? Because 5 years, that would get you destroyed in recruiting. Forever. So are we at that point where that's all good?
I think it depends on how you approach it. I think that Elijah Herring, if you sit there and say, I'm pulling your scholarship, go, then yes, it's bad. But I think if you just kind of encourage, look, man, you're not going to play here. I can help you find another spot that I think would be a good fit for you, but you're just not going to work here. But I do think that.
Look, I want to make sure I got you. I got you right. Guy does everything right. He's never late to a class. He's never late to a team function. He's a good leader. But at the end of the day, he goes out on the practice field, and 85 scholarship players and 15 walk-on players, and all the coaches know that he's just not as good. And he says yes, sir, and no, sir, for all of that. But you're okay with Elijah Herring being told that he needs to leave?
I think, yes. And by the way, that happened even nowadays. You're more pushed into it to make room. Back in the day, though, it's not like players weren't all, I'm sure you covered Fulmer telling players, right, that just saying, I just don't think you're a good fit here. I'll keep your scholarship, but you might want to, if you want to play, you might want to look elsewhere. That's probably a difficult conversation coaches have to have. And by the way, I'm going to throw this out there, specifically related to Elijah Herring. It's not a headliner when your Mike linebacker is your leading tackler. I'm just sorry, guys. That does not mean that they're a valuable loss. Okay, your Mike linebacker should be your leading tackler. That's just how the game works. So because ESPN's headline for this is Tennessee leading tackler Elijah Herring enters portal. I get it. I'd write that headline. You want the splash, but that does not mean that he's their best linebacker or even close to their best defensive player. He was their leading tackler because he was the main starter at the position that racks up the most tackles last year. That's like saying, your quarterback enters the portal and you say their leading pass thrower, their leading pass attempter last year enters the portal.
I agree with a lot on the Mike linebacker. So, but let me ask you this. Let's put a more finite number on it. Let me ask you where he ranks among Tennessee's linebackers, where he ranks among Tennessee's defensive front players, where he ranks among Tennessee's whole defense. Because I'll tell you right now that I don't think it's very high, and I don't think you're going to think so either. So if that's the type of player that Josh Heupel has to push out the door, then it sounds rough, but I kind of understand it. Brought to you by Don Self. Customer service still matters. For 40 years, they've built their business on taking care of their customers in the greater Chattanooga area. Call Don Self, 423-396-2126, 423-396-2126. Go to donself.net, donself.net. Herring is definitely, at best, the third best linebacker on this team, obviously behind the two starters, which would be Keenan Pili and Arian Carter, we believe at this point. He is, at best, the eighth best player in the defensive front, maybe more like 10 or 12. I think Caleb's even going to take me deeper, which I'm not going to argue with him about. And as far as the whole defense, well, you got about 40 some odd players on each side of the ball. So he's somewhere in the 30s.
He is.
Maybe if they put him on a defensive end tomorrow, I would change my mind. But if this is the guy that leaves, and you can headline it however you want, ESPN, them's the breaks. It's tough. I hate it for the kid. But how much was he going to play? And do you want to go to idea? I can't tell you. Guys that you think love the University of Tennessee, Caleb. The number of guys I can't begin to tell you that really hate the University of Tennessee because they didn't get to play enough. Because they were told by a coach that it's going to work out for you, just hang tight. And they did, and then boom, their eligibility's up. So while this sounds hardcore, it's really, the transparency is probably the better way to handle it, right?
Yeah, I agree. It's the most honest way. It gets you the most respect from coaches. I think, and look, I'm just going to be honest with you with linebackers. He's at best fourth because he's also behind T-Lander. And I do think he's behind Jalen Smith, Calipari, and I
was definitely trying to be overly nice.
Yes, and don't forget, Edwin Spillman is a 4-star who committed to the system this year. We know this much. Josh Heupel recruited Elijah Herring because he wanted Caleb Herring.
And not to interrupt, they moved Spillman into a media rotation, which means they think he's a good player because they don't let you talk unless you've done something on the practice field. Go ahead.
That is true. Now, I don't know how long that lasts because guess what? Spillman's from Lipscomb Academy, and you'll know how I feel about that.
You better enjoy your damn interviews now.
Yeah, right. But yes, with all of that, they recruited Elijah to get Caleb Herring, and that was all that was about. And so I think he's 6th or 7th on the linebacker rotation alone. You're right. That's it. That's likely what he is. And at best, he's 12th on the defensive line rotation. There was no way to work him in. And with now also, I mean, a lot of times, Dave, you know this, Tennessee runs a dime package in a lot of situations. So really, they're only using one linebacker a lot of times. And
yeah, I thought about 30-40% of the time, maybe they did that. I still think you want 2 linebackers. I still think you want 3 or 4, but you're right. I mean, now my question is though, with Calipari, I mean, what are your thoughts there with Caleb and where he stands? Because you just kind of explained with the Elijah connection. But what do you?
Caleb Herring is the Elijah connection. He's the defensive lineman because they're
Caleb Herring. Excuse me. What are your thoughts on the connection there?
Well, that's another reason you couldn't move Elijah Herring over to end because you've already got James Pearson, Joshua Josephs, but then you got David Hobbs, you've got Caleb Herring. I mean, you got Shandavian Bradley. everybody is just seeing James Pierce, and they're not realizing how deep this team goes at edge rusher right now in defensive end. I mean, it's absolutely incredible, and it's only going to get better going forward. So what were you going to do? Where were you going to play him? Now,
well, I will go ahead and say that I think the writing's on the wall, because whether or not Caleb's right will all determine, and whether or not they're loading up for the 2024 season. I don't think most coaches think like that, but I'm beginning to be won over by Caleb's mindset. And one of the things that seems small, but it begun to win me over a little bit, was when the kid, I thought he was going to be a defensive end, ended up at tight end. I can't remember his name. Is Conga?
Emmanuel Okoye.
Emmanuel Okoye. Yeah. The fact that he was put at tight end where he could develop over a couple of years, and you're not trying to get a pass rusher immediately out of him for 2024 because you need help there. I thought that was a huge statement about the program. Not to go too left of center from what you were saying, Caleb, but yeah, I mean, I think that they really like their depth at that position.
Yeah. Oh, they love their depth there. And that's what this is about. They didn't like it last year. I think there's there's another part of this too, which is, can we bring up coaching for a minute? Can we say that William Ing maybe saw that there wasn't a spot for Elijah Herring better than Brian Jean-Marie did? I mean, because I think William Ing is a better linebackers coach than Brian Jean-Marie.
So he came in and saw this guy needs to go. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I think happened.
Was Brian Jean-Marie too close to his players?
Well, Brian Jean-Marie probably was part of the recruiting process to get Elijah Herring, so he felt a little more connected and invested in him than William Ing did. You could tell me more about that, but I do feel like coaches are a lot more invested, particularly position coaches and players they recruited. But in general, they are. I mean, I'll just tell you, I remember the 2009 Lane Kiffin recruiting class. We can talk about what it turned into, but I think the real damage Lane Kiffin did, he kicked off half the roster, it felt like, to make room for his own recruits that year in 2009.
Who were felonious in many situations. Portions of the program brought to you by the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOK for 10% off. Promo code HOOK for 10% off. Can I ask you to do something that's virtually impossible, Caleb?
Sure.
Tell me who Tennessee should be concerned about in the transfer portal, who they should be concerned about losing, because I don't think anybody thought that Tyler Herring was going to jump up and leave when he did. I don't think anybody, Herring probably could have been speculated on, but let me ask you, who's up next? Who should Tennessee be concerned of and take care of? The show represented by Banks & Jones. Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Who should Tennessee be most concerned about getting poached in the transfer portal, Caleb?
Well, this is gun to my head having to nitpick, because up front, I'm going to say that we talked about this yesterday. I don't think a lot of players get poached in the spring transfer portal. Quite honestly,
they don't. And to be sure and clarify, they can't go to another SEC school.
Right, exactly. So I would probably say, like, none of the stars are going to be. So think about a reliable everyday blocker. I mean, or player. So that's why I said, like, Javonte Spraggins, someone who's been committed to Tennessee the whole time, but could get poached at the very end. I'm not thinking guys that recently transferred to Tennessee. So I mentioned John Campbell Jr. yesterday, but I don't think he would get poached. I don't think. Yeah, I would go Javonte Spraggins. That would be the scariest one to me, is if Javonte Spraggins, Amari Thomas on the defensive line, Bryson Eason, one of those guys.
I think that would be the scariest one. But as far as most likely to leave, I'm going to go in a different direction because I'm going to tell you there's going to be a surprise, right? Isn't there going?
Oh yeah,
Tyler Barron was a surprise, so there's going to be a surprise that we don't know, and it's going to happen. So I mean, we want to keep an eye on that. But I think it's any receiver that is not well established, and here's how I'm going to define well established. Obviously, Brew, right?
Yes.
Okay, so Brew McCoy, well established. From what I've been told, and man, I may eat my words, and Caleb, you know I will, but I think you know my batting average is pretty good. I think Dante Thornton has established himself as a guy who will have a position of regular playing time on this team. I know we did this last year, okay? So bear with me. Squirrel White, I think he's reestablished himself as the guy who's going to be the slot because they've realized that Dante Thornton's going to play on the outside. Then Mike Matthews, because I think he's the future. Anybody not named those 4 guys at receiver, I'm a little concerned about because the wrong guy gets in their ear and says, Josh Heupel, he's a pretty good offensive coach. I don't blame you for going there, but he only plays 3 receivers pretty much for the whole season. Are you aware of that? That's what would concern me. And it'll be interesting to see if Josh Heupel changes his approach about how many receivers he plays. I think this would be the year to do it. You're not a big fan of that. That would be my concern. Any receiver not named the 4 that I just named.
Unless the receiver is Mike Matthews, every single receiver on this team is replaceable because Tennessee is so loaded at receiver. And I can tell you right now, Brew McCoy's not leaving. So
no.
Yeah. So I'm telling you guys, unless the receivers
I can tell you from a financial perspective, Brew and Dante, and to some extent Squirrel, they're not going anywhere anytime soon, even if they want to.
Yeah. So with that
but you get it.
With that in mind, you don't have to worry about any receiver leaving unless it's Mike Matthews, because I think Mike Matthews is a rare talent. Rare talent. But outside of that, every other receiver is replaceable because you're so loaded at receiver.
Is there one that, aside from Matthews, Thornton, Brew McCoy, and Squirrel White, that you would at least want to lose?
Just Matthews and Brew McCoy. Those would be the top 2 that I would at least want to lose if I'm Tennessee. Brew for this year, Matthews for the future. I think you can replace any of the other ones. I mean, literally any of the other ones that are on that roster.
We didn't even mention Boo Carter either. Is that a guy that would potentially be interested if somebody came calling, because they're going to have to pay him in year 1? I believe what he's done in spring practice year 1, they're going to have to pay him. They're not going to be able to wait and pay him like they were able to do with Cooper Mays. That's not going to be the case. It's not going to work out for him. Our friends at Dynasty Pools and Spas remind you that you can get completely taken care of at their showroom. Then you order, and it's all right there. Delivery within 125 miles. Mention Off the Hook Sports gets $500 off. Tennessee's basketball team, it's just kind of a lot better. And it's not just a transfer. It's more than that. I'll tell you how in 60 seconds. Here, the best thing about Dynasty Pools and Spas is that they've got it all taken care of. What does that mean? Well, you stop by their showroom and check out their fantastic selection of top-notch spas in that showroom in Athens. Make your pick and get ready, because Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers within 125 miles of that location in Athens, that fantastic showroom. They've got the cover lift, steps, chemicals, and everything you need. Delivery at no extra charge. They're just down the road in Athens. You pick the spa you want, and it'll be there for you. Oftentimes discounted with military and first responders discounts. Also blemish models, or just mention Off the Hook Sports. That's Off the Hook Sports for $500 off. There's a discount for you on spas made right here in East Tennessee. Support local. Dynasty Pools and Spas also has the best chemicals for you and your spa and your pool. No fillers, just the chemicals made right here in East Tennessee. Support local. Dynasty Pools and Spas, $500 off if you mention Off the Hook Sports. $500 off if you mention Off the Hook Sports. Dynasty Pools and Spas, dynastypoolsandspas.com. Caleb, does Tennessee have the next Dalton Knecht? Because it was about this time a year ago where some guy named Dalton Knecht, who we talked about as being a very good transfer, Turned out to be an incredible transfer. Do they have the next Dalton Knecht?
So Tennessee added, for those who don't know, they added Hofstra Pride basketball guard who was more of a wing, Darlingstone Dubar, who was second team All CAA, by the way, just like Dalton Knecht last year was second team All Conference at his lower level, is a scorer from the wing at 6'6", just like Dalton Knecht was last year, and has been a 4-year player and is very experienced and is now going to play for Rick Barnes. This guy averaged almost 18 points a game, just under 7 rebounds, 1.5 assists, nearly a block, a steal a game. Here's the crucial part. He shot 40% from 3 on the year and hit just over 2 threes a game. And he's reliably good from the free throw line at 73%. So he's a reliable scorer. He is a reliable, really good scorer, exactly in every single way what Dalton Knecht was last year when he transferred to Tennessee from a lower level. I told you this, Dave, that Tennessee in the Rick Barnes era was going to get these guys.
I don't want to be Captain Wet Blanket, but Dalton Knecht was the biggest impact transfer in all of college athletics last year. Yes, I'm referring to Bo Nix as well. To get him again, it's a one in a decade shot or a one in a generation shot. You're putting too much on him, Caleb.
Dalton Knecht is not like Nico Iamaleava as a player. He's a little more a dime a dozen than you realize. And I'm dead serious about this.
Well, the dime a dozen, he's going to go top 10 in the NBA draft, according to the prognostications I saw. That's like about $20 billion a dozen.
Dalton Knecht he's going so high. He's the first of what's about to be a trend, but he was just the first.
I actually agree with you on this part, so I'm not even going to try to argue with you.
Yes, I mean,
I think you're going to see a renaissance of college basketball.
Yes, exactly. Because let's be honest. Do you not think Darlingstone Dubar saw Dalton Knecht and was like, "Oh, what could Rick Barnes do with me?" And that's why he transferred. Yes, because it's the exact same thing. He's going to transfer to Tennessee because he wants to develop and focus on his defense. And if he has Knecht's mentality, and usually, and I think you would agree with me on this, right? These type of players, 4-year guys, they have that type of mentality, right? They want to be coached and developed when they're in college.
Yeah, and I thought it was the maturity that Kelly Washington had, that people hated Kelly Washington. If you go back and look at him, at Tennessee's former receiver who came from the minor leagues, yeah, they're typically in their early 20s as compared to late teenagers, which we know there can be a lot of development. And you know what? Typically, also, I'm going to call this the McAllen Castles effect, Caleb. What can affect these guys and turn them into positive impacts on not only your culture, but your team's on-field success is he saw what he had. I think I may have mentioned this to you before, but they would get together and make pasta like on weekday nights because there's no cafeteria open. And he gets to Tennessee and there's a 24/7 cafeteria. There's a place to get your hair cut. There's a place to go out and do this, a place to do whatever. And I think he showed up on campus, and if he had any doubt as to what college football could do for him, I think that erased any doubt as soon as he walked on campus.
Oh, you're probably right. You're probably right. Now, I wonder if, like, sometimes if things are so nice that you're like, you get swept up and you're like, you just can't help but enjoy everything around you and not take football as seriously.
I think that can happen with an 18-year-old, which maybe I failed to make my point. I think that can happen with an 18-year-old. I think a 22-year-old that sees that and like, whoa, if football can bring me this, or basketball in this case, can bring me this, and it could just get better, I don't think you're likely to lose a 21 or 22-year-old.
No, yeah, that makes sense. I agree, particularly when their years are running out and they realize
and chicks, which is what we're talking about, right? That's what you lose. That's what you lose an 18-year-old. Most oftentimes, it's getting spoiled by their fans and or the ladies.
Well, and exactly. And let's take it from football to just, Dave, you and I were journalism majors, but who cares what your major is? When you're 18 years old and in college, you're just partying. You're like, I'm in college. Woo! And then 21 hits and you're like, oh, my career's about to start. I really need to like buckle down and like get this taken care of. And you start studying harder. Probably is the same for athletes, right? When they realize the draft is coming up, they're like, oh, this is happening. I need to like really get myself together. If I'm going to
and I want to be real clear. I love everything you've said about the way Rick Barnes is poised to do this. It's kind of changed my thinking from how long will he continue to coach and Tennessee has to tolerate short tournament runs to how much longer will he coach so that they can make a deep tournament run with a group of guys. What happens? Let me ask you this, Caleb. If along the lines of your thinking, Rick Barnes is so open-minded and he's so willing to change that he says, I'm going to put even more on this transfer portal thing. I'm going to take 2 or 3 guys that would have a major impact instead of one guy. Because with the players he has leaving, he might have to this year. Is he equipped to do that?
Yes. I said this for a while. He is the, like what Kentucky fans said John Calipari is with one and dones, Rick Barnes could be with transfer one and dones, which are different than from one and done freshmen. One and done 18-year-olds are totally different from one and done 21-year-olds. As you know, they are one and done 21-year-olds. You can throw a team together of one and done 21-year-olds. And they'll be so about it. A great example, because Dave, remember you're a Celtics fan when the Celtics got KG and Paul Pierce, KG and Ray Allen, and everybody thought, oh, they'll need a year to develop chemistry. No, they won't. They were all in their mid-30s. As you get older, it becomes very much easier to pick up chemistry quickly. And I mean, Ray Allen, more than any of them, willingly sacrificed his role to play in Boston and get a ring. And I think you see that in college too, with transfers and one and dones like that.
No, I agree as well, and I think these players want to play. I mean, if you saw what Tennessee did with Dalton Knecht last year, and you're not at least impressed, I don't know what to tell you. And if you haven't spoken to Dalton Knecht and you're considering transferring to Tennessee, I don't know what to tell you either. I thought about writing Recruiting for Dummies, that series of books, because. Yes. I could offer so many tips. If you're a young lad who is set to be born here in June, turns out to be a highly rated prospect, I can take care of you. We'll have the coaches running. They won't have us running. Trust me, you're good there.
I mean, I totally get it. It's
you don't have to tell somebody if a school offered you a scholarship or not, do you? Anyway, that would be chapter 4.
So in all like we'll see if Dalton Knecht was a dime and doesn't, or if this is going to be a trend. I think it's going to be a trend because Darlington Dubar is the exact same type of player profile. Now, again, I think everything about Dalton Knecht's success was his talent, but then his mentality as an older guy going to play for Rick Barnes. And you know this, Dave. Before this era, a guy like Dalton Knecht would have never had a shot at the higher level. He'd have been stuck at Northern Colorado or whatever and graduated and then gone to work in business somewhere. But nowadays,
I wonder if he'd actually. What was the college you went to before Northern Colorado? The junior college.
That's a good question.
I wonder if he would have got out of there without a transfer portal. I mean, maybe he would have, but you're right.
Yeah.
He could have easily gotten lost in the shuffle.
And that's the thing. That's what's so great about the transfer portal is actually your more great players at lower levels are getting noticed who never would have been noticed before by higher programs. And they're now able to prove themselves.
So let me ask you this. Like Nick Saban got a discount for a different reason. Does Rick Barnes get a discount for transfers?
For a transfer wing like Dalton Knecht, he is now because of what he just did with Dalton Knecht. Because here's the truth of the matter. The discount's a big deal in basketball because, guys, I don't know if y'all know the difference between NBA money and NFL money, but it's leaps and bounds. You take the discount for college basketball if NBA money's on the table because that NBA money is so generational.
Right. Dalton Knecht, what he did the same thing that I did in journalism, where I said 2 years, this is going to be my graduate assistant, and I don't care what I make. And I was basically a grad assistant, didn't make anything. And that's what he did. He said, I don't care about the NIL money. And all that's true. And I know he did a lot of autograph signings that he didn't even ask to get paid for. So he wasn't worried. The money was the last thing on his mind, Caleb. His thoughts were, if I work hard, if I produce a top NBA talent, the money will be there. And he's about to be right.
Yeah. And I mean, all top 10 picks walk home with at least $13 million of wealth. That's the least amount they walk home with.
Now, the flip side, and where this will make your argument even stronger, is you do not get a guaranteed contract if you are outside the first round of the NBA draft. So let's just say Dalton Knecht was a borderline, or Grant Williams was a borderline first-round pick, right?
Right.
Okay.
Mid-level, mid-tier.
Right. So if you can go to Grant Williams and you can offer him $750,000 to stay another year, you might get him to stay. I mean, that's a possibility.
That is true. Now, here's a good question, because I have to give credit to college basketball for this, because I thought it was very unfair that, and I think college football is finally doing this too, where it was very unfair that if you declared for the draft and didn't get drafted, you couldn't come back to college. I just thought that was totally unfair to players and making decisions for their futures. But I would say, what if you go to the draft and you get drafted in the second round? Can you come back to college then, or do you still have to stay drafted at that point?
Wow. I do not want to be wrong on that. Can you look that up and double check? Because I don't want to be wrong. I think that you can just go. Well, if you haven't signed with an agent, I think you can just go back to college. But chances are you've signed with an agent. So
well, no, you can go back to college now if you signed with an agent, though. It's
well, how about the NBA and this would help Tennessee and college basketball sit down on the table and say, listen, if you draft a player, you have the rights to him for 2 or 3 years instead of just 1, so that somebody could go through the draft, realize they're going to the Grizzlies or whoever they're going to, and then go better their game at the collegiate level.
That's what it was with Larry Bird, right? Didn't the Celtics draft the rights to Larry Bird and he still played college?
You said that before. I don't know that that's right. But
I got it wrong. No, the NBA. Okay, you can participate. You can declare for the draft and go through all the processes, and then all the scouts will come tell you where you'd be drafted. But you have to, if you want to go back to college, you have to withdraw before the draft even starts.
Right. I don't think you said that wrong. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. His connection dropped. Perfect timing. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Please hit that like and subscribe button on the way out. We'll talk to you on Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. on, and we'll have the latest on the Vols, as well as Jimmy Himes will join us this week. We want to thank John Adams and more.